Okay, we're live. Welcome everyone at home. Welcome everyone here. Do you want to close the door? Like if you leave it ajar, so if somebody comes late, you got a couple of sometimes are stragglers. Thank you. So I feel like it would be a good idea for us to revisit self-compassion. And there's a particular section in this Christopher Germer book that I tend to return to over and over, even though I think the entire book is really helpful and every single chapter is filled with exercises. And much of the research about meditation has to do with compassion or loving kindness versions of meditation and how helpful that is and all the changes that it makes to the brain and to our perception of the world. Come in. So I'm going to read a little bit from here, but we're going to have some interaction about these ideas. This is just to get you thinking and reconnecting because I find even for myself, there's this return to the basics that seems necessary from time to time to just get back to really simple and straightforward. What's this all about? What am I doing? Where am I trying to go? And self compassion is really a foundation for everything else. It's the way that we want to practice our meditation or our mindfulness, and it leads to all the things that we're really after to be kinder and gentler in the ways that we express in the world and the ways that we interact with others. So, this practice of reducing harm or violence towards self translates into reduced violence or harm to others. Okay. So, I thought first we'd start out with a little bit of a grounding or body exercise. And sometimes I'm going to give a little guidance here. We've done this one before. Not everyone here has done this exercise, but I think it's still useful. It involves the legs. And sometimes, if we don't have good somatic awareness, which somatic is of the body, so if we don't have good connection to our body, and there could be lots of reasons for that, we might not even know what to look for if we're checking to see what's going on inside. So, as a first step, just start to feel where you make contact with the chair and perhaps feel the way the ground makes contact with your feet, or that your feet are supported by the ground. And just as a general check in for your entire body, see if you can take a cursory self assessment of how present you are right now in the form of a percentage. Just right off the top of your head, what percent here do you feel, or what percent present do you feel? And it's not a judgment, it's just a way of getting a little bit of information. You can be curious about whatever number seems to pop up, not working at it too hard, just noticing whatever number pops into your head first. And then you can come back to noticing yourself seated in the chair and noticing your legs and the way the ground supports them. And you're going to experiment now with what happens if you imagine giving over all of the weight of your legs to the ground. So you're letting go of your legs and seeing what it feels like to let the ground completely support your legs. Just letting the ground have all of that weight. And sometimes people might find this exercise to be a little bit abstract, but basically you're just releasing whatever weight you can sense in your legs and imagining that the ground is holding up your legs. You don't have to do it. The ground is doing it for you. And if it doesn't feel comfortable to completely release the weight, see what amount of the weight can you allow the ground to support for you. And then just giving the ground that much. Okay. And then next you're going to check your legs for 4 different sensations. And you're just going to see, you might notice any or all of these, some of them, none of them. You're checking first for tingling, sensation of whatever you might describe as tingling in your feet or legs. Temperature, so some sense of coolness or warmth in your feet or legs. And you can check for a sense of shivering or shaking in your legs. And finally, for some sense of space or spaciousness, air, whatever that feels like to you, whatever you would call that. And you're just noticing whatever you find there as you continue to give over the weight of your legs to the ground. Okay, and then come back to noticing where you make contact with the chair. And just taking an overall assessment of what it's like in your body below the waist. Is there any general sense of space or of vibration or of fluidity, whatever that means to you, a flow or liquidity, just a general impression. Okay, and then come back to noticing the sensation of giving your legs over to the ground. And then just rest and let your attention relax. Anyone have any questions or anything they want to share or ask? Okay. So I was going to read a little from Christopher Germer, and there'll be some questions. I'm going to pause in places to see what you guys have to say. So I already described the reason that we're doing this. And he's talking about these different ways that we can notice whether we are being self-compassionate. And the basis of that is non-harm. And there's a lot of discussion in Buddhism and Buddhist writing about non-harm and what that means. He says, at its most basic level, the practice of self-compassion means not harming ourselves. It's often easier to notice when we're harming ourselves than it is to discover ways of being nicer to ourselves. Consider the following. How do you brush your teeth? Gently? Harshly? Do you rush around in the morning? Does your body feel tense or stiff from lack of exercise? Are you fatigued? Do you overeat? Do you get stuck in front of the computer? Do you have sex just because you feel you should? Do you resent going to so many social events? Do you rage at politicians on TV? Do you overspend on the holidays? Do you have to speak with your mother every Sunday? The devil is in the details. Most of the harmful things we do to ourselves are unconscious habits. We don't stop and ask ourselves what we want or whether there's a good reason for it. The first question to ask when you start practicing self-compassion is this harming me? If it is, drop it. When you know how it feels to feel good and think you deserve it, a red flag will go up when you're harming yourself, and you'll probably stop what you're doing. We also have mental habits, mostly unconscious, that cause us trouble. For example, if your attention is unrestrained, jumping from one thing to another, you'll suffer from mental agitation. And a perfectly good day can be spoiled if you find yourself entangled in disturbing emotions, brooding about the past or worrying about the future. An awareness practice like mindfulness meditation is a useful antidote to these common types of mental suffering. One mental habit that can wreak havoc in our lives is self-judgment. If you watch your mind for 10 minutes after something goes wrong, you'll probably notice that you're criticizing yourself. It's undoubtedly useful to know what went wrong and to correct our mistakes, but usually we go way beyond that. What can we do about self-judgment? It doesn't work to just stop judging yourself, because you're likely to judge yourself for judging yourself. Remember, what we resist persists. The best solution is simply to witness judgments, letting them come and go. So he recommends an exercise, and the way it goes is like this, and you can try this on your own outside and report back. Mark out 15 minutes in the course of an ordinary day for this exercise. Choose a time when your mind might wander, maybe while you're driving a car or eating a meal alone. Say to yourself, over the next 15 minutes, I'll check every minute or so to see if I'm having a self-critical thought. If you have an electronic device that beeps, you can program it to ring every minute. Don't worry about remembering the content of your thoughts. Make a mental tally, perhaps counting on your fingers, of how many times you criticize yourself. It's not easy to recognize self-critical thoughts because they happen so quickly. Sometimes it helps to focus on the body. If there's a little tension in your stomach, perhaps you were having a critical thought. It's okay to go back a few seconds to what you were thinking a moment before you felt physical tension. Ironically, the intention to be aware of self-judgment starts to eliminate the habit, even if you miss most of what's happening in your mind. So the next part is called savoring, and I'm going to pause for a second here because that's sort of like the antidote. And I'm wondering what anybody thinks about the list. Do you remember what the list was of the things? So brushing your teeth, rushing around in the morning, lack of exercise, feeling fatigued, overeating, getting stuck in front of the computer. I think I pretty much could say yes to every single one of those things on the list. Yeah. And so we're mostly unaware of the impact of that kind of treatment of ourselves. And the causes are various. Sometimes our religious upbringing, when we're young and we hear things that are in the Bible or perhaps things that are said in sermons, we might get the impression that we're supposed to deny or ignore ourselves. And the section just prior to non-harm, he talks about how the incorrect assumption about that we're supposed to ignore ourselves is actually just a mistake that we make. And little kid minds do lots of odd things with things that they read or hear about from the Bible or at church. And the assumption in the writings, and he gives some examples, the writings of the Buddha and in the Bible are actually predicated on we already love ourselves. Like self-love is assumed. So I guess those books are and those texts are written for people without trauma who aren't gonna twist it into, right, something that is self-critical or self-denying. But we don't know that when we're kids. We don't know. So we want to be careful or notice at least if we have some hidden belief that it's not okay to be kind to ourselves. And we can have lots of different beliefs about that. And some of them are intentionally taught in religious settings or as part of our upbringing. That there's this way in which we might be taught that there's this way in which if we're kind to ourselves, then it's all going to go to heck, right? Who's going to keep it all in line? We'll do nothing. We'll sit around and eat candy all day and never exercise and never get anything done, right? We'll just be a bunch of big lazy blobs, right? Without the threat of something or someone to keep us in line, right? It's this lack of trust of ourselves, a lack of trust in our basic nature. Right? One of the things I've come to see and very firmly believe and understand is none of my clients want to be depressed or sick or to not be pursuing their passion and being authentic. Everyone wants that. There's energy there for every single human wants to pursue it, right? And very little need actually for someone standing over them with a stick to provide that energy. It's naturally there. It's already there. And yet we acquire these beliefs that we have to, and some of it's generational. We might have families that grow up with hardship or generational trauma, cultural trauma that we have to suffer for a really long time before we can enjoy success or be happy or relax. So a practice that involves starting to pay attention and starting to practice non-harm can help us start to key into or to notice ways in which we might be preventing ourselves from not only treating ourselves well, but experiencing joy, right? Pursuing things that matter to us, pursuing things that we're passionate about or where our strengths lie. And so I think the value is, as he said, it's in looking. It's paradoxical. We are not taught that change happens just by looking, right? Our culture is do, just do it, right? Not very often are we taught to kind of stand back and notice what we're thinking and just notice what's happening, right? And our history can precondition us to always needing to fix or change. Even fixing self or others can be harming. It can be violence. Because implicit in the fixing is, I'm not okay, or you're not okay. The place from which we offer help or where we try to effect change from matters very, very much. If it's a place of fear, right, it won't happen unless I force it, right? And that's self-violence. It's usually going in a direction that doesn't lead to happiness. It doesn't lead to the things we're actually after: peace and joy, authenticity. Authenticity is like the antithesis of forced, right? It just arises naturally. It's what we are, it's who we are, right? So if we have to force it, if we feel like we're working really hard at it, got to keep ourselves in line, right?
Sometimes who we are several different people.
Well, we have lots of different roles.
Because I think I'm different at work than I am at home, or things that I do.
So your response changes in those settings, but does who you are, who you really are, actually change?
No. No. A little. At work, I'm more professional than I am outside of work.
Well, if we look and we check to see who or what we really are, we might find that there is something that, although undefinable, is fairly stable. And you could start by noticing the awareness. So, the thing that's looking when you meditate, the thing that's observing, witnessing, or any time that you're anywhere out in the world or here right now, the thing that's looking out of your eyes right now and looking out of my eyes back at you, right? Pure awareness. Right? It may watch us respond in different ways in different situations, but that awareness is the same awareness that was there the day that you were born and the one that you remember the very first time that you became aware of yourself. Right? That one thing that doesn't alter, that's always been there watching. It doesn't change. If you check, it doesn't change. Its responses change based on situations. And this is the thing that we're noticing or starting to get a handle on when we meditate. Noticing that no matter what we're experiencing, no matter how we experience it, because every sit is different, but no matter what's happening, good day, bad day on the cushion, fidgety, restless, uncomfortable, no matter what that is, we remain unchanged. We observe it. The thing that is really us observes this stream of experience. It comes and goes, this continuous stream. Right? If we get confused and think we are the stream, then things get a little bit nuts, right? They get uncomfortable. Notice what happens if you think of yourself as observing the stream or being in the stream. Notice the felt sense in the body of the difference between I'm always here, noticing the stream, versus I'm going for this ride in the stream. And this is something that we can return to again and again, checking. Because this is about changing our habitual way of relating to life. So when we relate to life as though we are the stream, then there's this grasping for control and not liking what comes up sometimes and wanting to push it away. But if we have some distance from the stream and we go, oh, here it comes and there it goes, and here it comes and there it goes, right? We don't ever get too attached or too excited about what's happening in the stream because we know it will come and it will go.
But it feels more alive, lively, thinking about being in the stream rather than sort of. And I know the benefit of it,
Mm-hmm.
but it just
Right.
seems livelier. Thinking of being in it, and going with it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We can have a great attraction for being in the stream. Those highs and lows, they're very compelling. Yeah. And we can equate those highs and lows with passion. Right? So we want to be careful and notice, where's the energy really coming from? Okay? And I always tell everyone, don't believe a damn word I say. You all have to investigate this for yourselves. Because you can't buy in unless it comes from you. Everything I say is just a pointer. It's just giving you another angle and another angle and another angle to look at life from. Because possibly there's an angle where you'll go, ooh, I see something.
What did you say about passion again?
About mistaking being in the stream for passion rather than and noticing, where does the energy come from?
Because from the perspective of the observer, there is no passion. The stream's where the passion is. The whole point of passion is that it's up and down.
Mhm.
I don't feel, I don't know, I think I just have a different relationship with my stream. I think, I don't know, I think there is passion from the observer, but it's more of this steady calling almost, rather than the chaotic up and down and all over, and I can't get out, and I'm stuck in, and I went out, and I don't know. I think there is like a calm, steady, even passion from the observing. I don't know. I guess I just, I don't even know why I'm saying this. I just felt, I feel like there is, so maybe there is.
Kind of agree. I'm kind of a go with the flow type person, so I don't. But I get scared to really jump into the stream when it's low because I don't want to be stuck there. That makes sense. That's when I kind of back out of it and just let it happen. And there's nothing I can do about it at that point. I'm just like, okay, next.
I think I'm just in the stream all the time and feel like I'm drowning in the stream and I want so bad to get out of it, but the observing piece seems very enticing to me and I can't get there because I'm drowning in the stream.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is something for if any of you or all of you are interested in checking out for yourself. What does it seem like to you when you investigate it? Sometimes what's recommended is a process of subtraction. Right? This is something that's very difficult to talk about because we don't have good words to describe. There is no language for this. This experience of our authenticity or true self or spirit or spaciousness, whatever that is, there aren't any good descriptors for it. And even though we have to use this language right now that talks about being separate from the stream, there's actually no separateness. But initially, we take the observing perspective so that we can get a little bit of distance from what's happening and notice our patterns. So that is the first step. We get that little bit of distance and we feel how, oh, there seems to be this grounding. There seems to be this feeling of, it's okay when I'm in this observing point of view. If I can ask this question, what happens when I allow everything to be as it is? Right? We're dropping back into that true self or dropping back into that perspective and noticing what happens. Noticing, oh, is there something that feels more right about that position versus caught up in the, right? Whatever that thing is, whatever that energy is that's pulling us along, and that we're either pushing against or grasping at in the moment. And there's no right or wrong, and there's no judgment. We're all just checking this out for ourselves and noticing how our perspectives, even what we say we think is going on right now, it could change in the next second, it could change tomorrow. Go, oh no, that's not what it seems like anymore. Now it's this. Right? Now it's different. So we leave space. We stay in beginner's mind. Right? That's the place where we don't know. We try and stay in that place where we're not assuming anything, because then we're not closed off. to receiving or experiencing something new, right? The next step in our path, the next awareness, the next new aha or insight. Because as soon as we think we know, then we're kind of blocked from being able to access what we need to see next. Right? So this is very lovely, all this sharing. I really appreciate the courage and the sharing from exactly where you are right now. That's the most important thing, being honest with yourself about where you are right now. So there's this one other little section about savoring, and then we'll take a break to have our guided meditation. So the word savoring refers to the capacity to attend to, appreciate, and enhance the positive experiences in one's life. It's a self-kindness to savor. The opposite of savoring is raining on your own parade. Consider the following questions. Do you let yourself enjoy a compliment? Have you lingered over a delicious meal lately? Can you revel in the love you feel for certain people? Are you prone to take a deep breath of fresh autumn air? Do you let yourself laugh out loud when you're happy? Is it okay to feel pride in accomplishment? Do you take pictures to remember great times? Do you have friends who really know how to enjoy themselves? We shouldn't cling too tightly to positive experiences because that will cause suffering when they disappear. But we don't want to avoid happy moments because we're afraid of losing them either. It takes courage to savor positive experiences. Emily Dickinson wrote, "I can wade grief, whole pools of it. I'm used to that. But the least push of joy breaks up my feet and I tip, drunken." Are you ready to open the door to both positive and negative experiences? Savoring is a variation on mindfulness. When we savor, there's the intention to enter fully into the experience rather than cling to it or drag it out. The goal of mindfulness is not to get hooked by positive or negative experiences, to let things be just as they are, fully and completely. In an advanced state of mind, we can savor grief and sorrow too. Research has shown that the savoring of pleasant experiences can become a habit that elevates our baseline level of daily happiness. You can also savor your own personal qualities. Enjoying what you do well doesn't mean you have to be arrogant about it. He makes a suggestion, and I can write this down for you guys afterwards. There's a quiz you can take that is a signature strengths questionnaire, free of charge. It says your strengths are ranked against one another for yourself. And after you've identified your strengths, you can intentionally apply them in your daily life. For example, if you're naturally curious, then create opportunities to learn new things. If humor is your strength, let yourself be entertained. Also, when you're going through a tough time, remind yourself of your strengths. If bravery is your strength, use that special quality when you're in need. If it's humility, find your way through with humility. And then the next section is on cultivating positive emotions. But I really like this idea. It's a variation on self-compassion, that we recognize our strengths, right? Some of us have humor as a strength. Some of us are just very grounded and calm in the face of an emergency. Some of us can be very practical or very comforting. We can use those strengths to help ourselves in difficult times. And we can use them just in general to cultivate and honor who we are as an individual. Right? Self-compassion is attending to those things that are differences. This is something that, when we have a sort of self-denying or violence towards self orientation, we might try to force ourselves into a mold to try to be like other people, to compete with other people. But the most kind thing we can do is to acknowledge who we really are and work with that, honor that, and recognize our own strengths and uniqueness. It doesn't mean we're better than anybody else or more special than anyone else, but we are all unique individuals, unique beings. One of the things I've been trying to cultivate more kindness toward for myself is being an introvert. The world is kind of built around extroverts and extroversion. Our institutions and our systems and our culture, especially starting around the mid or early 19th century, started to take a turn toward recognizing personality over what's called character in terms of the traits that we value. And so, you probably all have heard of Dale Carnegie, right? How to win friends and influence people. And it's all over in our culture, right? The way that we educate kids, you got to work together in groups, and you got to get along with all kinds of people, and right, it very much we have to learn how to give speeches and be extemporaneous speakers and be able to influence people and be friendly and likable, and so those are all kind of extroverted ideals and qualities, and introversion is not as celebrated or valued, but it still has a really important role in our society. I'm reading a book right now called Quiet. It's about introversion. Very interesting. A lot of science to back up what she's talking about in that book. So if you're interested, I highly recommend it. It's a pretty good book. So you guys can think about ways, and you can also write down the link to the quiz here if you want to see what it says about your signature strengths. I also like the Discover Your Strengths quiz. I can't remember the author's name of that, but if you Google Discover Your Strengths, there's a book and there's a quiz that you can take. And I like the way that they characterize strengths as doing words. So, like researcher, it's very much, it's not as these like static qualities, it's more labeled as tendencies and ways that you can really recognize. I mean, it was very obvious to me after I saw it on paper. Oh, yeah, I do all those things, and I totally take them for granted. So it'd just be a way of getting more in touch with whatever your strengths are and honoring your uniqueness. Okay. Anything to add before we have a break? Okay. So take 5, and then we'll come back and have guided meditation. Okay.
Do you have them posted or something?
I do. Back on.
Can the camera see you?
Yes. Okay. So, guys, go ahead and start to get comfy in your chairs and get a sense of yourself in the room and in the chair. Notice where you make contact with the chair. Feeling the contact your feet make with the ground. And see if you can let yourself drop back into your body after being kind of up in the head a little bit with all this conversation, discussion. See if you can let your awareness settle more fully into your body below the neck. And as a reminder, the only goal for this meditation is for you to notice. You're just noticing. So starting as we usually do at the top of the head, turn your attention to that space at the top of your head and just see if you can be friendly with whatever you find there. You might notice no sensations at all. You might notice tingling, coolness or warmth, tension. And you're just noticing, not hanging on too tightly or dismissing. And then start to let your attention drift down to begin noticing your face. And perhaps noting those areas where tension seems to reside, around the eyes, the jaw, or the mouth. And see if you can let your eyeballs sink back into their sockets. And can you release your jaw or let your tongue just go totally limp in the bottom of your mouth? And notice what those two things do to the muscles around your eyes, face, jaw, neck. And then leaving whatever you notice there still in the face, letting your attention shift around to notice the sides of your head, noticing temples and ears. And if you sense any tension there, you can imagine allowing your ears to drop slightly, just releasing them, and notice what happens. And then finally, let your attention continue around to notice the back of your head and the back of your neck. Being as friendly as you can with whatever you find there. And you might ask for some relaxation in that area if there's any discomfort. Just making a little request and then opening to see what happens after that request. And then gently preparing to shift your attention away from whatever remaining sensations are there in the back of your head and neck, to begin noticing your shoulders, starting where your shoulders meet your neck at the sides and scanning across the tops of your shoulders, pausing to notice the shoulder joints, and then scanning the length of your upper arms, pausing to notice the elbow joints, and then scanning forearms, pausing to notice wrists, and then scanning the entire length of your hands all the way to the fingertips. And just noticing whatever you might find there this evening. There might be tiredness, restlessness, tingling, achiness, coolness or warmth. And you're just seeing if you can notice whatever's there. Without getting too attached to it or pushing it away. Seeing if you can notice both arms all the way from your shoulders down to your fingertips. And then preparing to shift your attention again to begin noticing the core of your body. So pulling attention away from arms and shoulders and starting to notice throat and scanning downward, noticing chest and heart area, diaphragm or that space between chest and belly, and then noticing belly down into abdomen, into your hips, and feeling yourself seated in and supported by the chair and all the structures in your back and your core. And then scanning your back, noticing upper back and middle back and down into lower back. And noticing your bottom seated in the chair. And you might notice any areas that seem to have discomfort or call your attention. First, just noticing. And seeing if you can allow your belly to soften. Can you allow a relaxation in the heart area or imagine one? Can you imagine a loosening at the throat? All the while noticing the strength and the structures of your back and how they support you. Soft front, strong back. And then just get ready to shift your attention again, giving one last notice to whatever's there in the core of your body that got your attention, leaving whatever you found right there where you found it, and beginning to notice your legs, starting at the hips, scanning across the tops of your thighs, and then scanning underside, noticing the backs of your thighs and the contact you're making with the chair. Feeling both legs above the knee, and then noticing the knees, noticing that joint, and then noticing below the knees, scanning down shins and calves, feeling your heels on the ground, and then scanning along the lengths of your feet all the way to the tips of your toes. Noticing the entire length of left leg, and then the entire length of the right leg. And then noticing them both at the same time. Seeing if you can be friendly with whatever you find there. Whether your mind labels it positive or negative or neutral. And then start to prepare to shift your attention again, leaving whatever you noticed in your legs right there where you found it, and letting your attention naturally gravitate toward or rise toward where you perceive breathing to be happening. Noticing breathing in and breathing out. Not changing the breath in any way. Just noticing breathing is happening without you having to do anything to make it happen. And if you like, you might pause for a moment at the end of your out breath, noticing the space that's there, the pause, before you begin to draw the next breath in. And see if you can tell where your breath seems to feature most prominently. Where does breathing seem to be happening in your body? Is it the air entering and exiting at the nostrils? Or the sensation of air moving in your throat? Or rising and falling of chest or belly? And noticing not where it was last time, but where breathing seems to be happening right now. What's your experience of it in this moment? And then, if you like, see if you can allow other things in the space of the present moment to enter your awareness alongside the breath. What else might be there right now? Sounds, sensations, thoughts or emotions. Feeling of a chair or your feet on the ground. Clothes. Letting your attention move freely to notice whatever might be here right now. Can you let your attention move freely? Can you just follow it and notice what it seems to want to pay attention to? And if you like, you can assist that freedom of movement, of your awareness, by introducing a question into your space. You can ask, what happens if I allow everything to be as it is in this moment? What's the experience of that? And there's not an actual answer to the question. The answer is what you find in your experience after you ask the question. And you're just checking, what's it like to let go of the controller, the one who's trying to meditate right now? What's that like to give up ideas about what meditation is supposed to be like? What's it like to be in this moment without effort, without struggle? What's it like to not be in opposition to anything in this moment? What's the experience of that? And if you get lost or pulled away by thought, you can just reintroduce the question. Just recall your intention to notice what happens if I allow everything to be as it is in this moment. And you can just take some time now to savor whatever you notice as we reach the end of this meditation. The last 2 minutes to savor silence, savor a feeling of space or spaciousness. Or a feeling of not having any boundaries, feeling your bigness. Noticing that you did not arrive at this place through effort, but rather by relinquishing effort. Just noticing one last time what it's like to allow everything to be as it is. And as you're ready, you can begin to send or sense some energy in your arms and legs and offer some gentle movement to hands and feet, fingers and toes, gently allowing yourself as much time as you need to transition. So nice to be with you all this evening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Namaste. You're welcome.
I just found out what that meant this weekend.